Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. My name is Eric Speck. I am the VP of Ethics and Support at RPH Ally. I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Bryce Bowers. He's a physician resident and a specialist in mental health and wellness. We're going to talk about his journey through medical school, some of the challenges he faced, and some advice that he has for you guys and how he's giving back to the community right after this. All right, Dr. Bowers, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Doing well, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really glad you were able to jump on today. You and I connected maybe just about a month ago now, and we've had a nice conversation and been interacting on social media a little bit. And I really enjoyed that first conversation that you and I had. You know, you reached out to me, and we got to talk about your struggles, what you went through as a resident physician, and how you've overcome a lot of those challenges. And you truly are doing great now. You know, you got everything back on track, which is fantastic. But you're not only, taking care of yourself and growing yourself, you're doing a lot of other things in the community to help others. So, if you wouldn't mind, maybe share a little bit about your journey. You know, what happened, as much or little detail as you like, how that experience was, and then what are you doing now and why?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm happy to share any and all. I think vulnerability is kind of the key for all of us in healthcare. I grew up in Michigan and I was really not wanting to go to college at all, or let alone medical school. But, I kind of got pushed into it by my uncle. I was very fortunate to be mentored in that way. That education was my way out because I grew up pretty humble. I grew up pretty poor. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just never wanted to keep living the way we were living as when I was a kid.
Hmm.
When I finally got into college, I just was really craving a greater challenge. And my family doctor at the time had always pushed me to go to medical school. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I finally went for it my junior year. And then so I had to stay an extra year in undergrad, which is never a bad thing, right? Like we all love college. So did a victory lap and got into Michigan State. And I thought everything, my dreams had come true, and I was in medical
Yep.
school and things were going to be good. And things were pretty good at the beginning. I definitely suffered a large amount of imposter syndrome. I was at
Hmm.
school with some of these brainiac kids from like UCLA and like all over, these crazy undergrads. But I worked really hard and I did really well. But, over time, as many of you all know, like working that hard, that much pressure, those expectations really start to wear on you. And
Hmm.
um, it's tough because when you're that young and that busy, you really don't have a lot of time to slow down and think about how you're feeling and what you're going through, right? It's always kind of the next thing up. So I remember after I took my first set of board exams, I slept maybe 2 hours the night before, and I drank so much caffeine the next day I was just shaking, just trembling. And
Yeah.
our first set of board exams dictates what specialty we can go into. And I took the exam on pure adrenaline and caffeine, and I walked out, and I just wanted to like pass out. I was
Yeah.
just dying. And that was the first time that I didn't know it at the time, but I was burned out, right? I'd been studying 14 hours a day for 7 days a week. And I was just ready to just say, screw everything. And that's kind of what I
Yeah.
started doing.
Yeah.
And a big part of my journey is substance use. I got big into using alcohol to numb my
Yeah.
feelings right about that
And
time.
yeah, I was going to ask you, when did that all start? Or how were things in undergrad? Were you using alcohol or anything else in undergrad to any extent?
I wasn't using it to numb. I was just kind of like the social
Okay.
drinker in undergrad, but I was super
Okay.
focused in undergrad. I
Yep.
never like the stress that I had. I never drank to get rid of the stress. I just drank because my
Okay.
friends went out and it was a good time. But like I was known in undergrad as like, geez, Bryce never goes out. Like he doesn't want to
Yeah.
drink. Like I got made fun of a lot.
Yep.
And so there was this huge shift between the two,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And And so, but it worked for a while. That's the thing. I mean, like us in
Yeah.
healthcare, we're so good at like hiding things, and
Yeah.
so my mantra was work hard, play hard. And so, I
Yep.
went into my third and fourth year of medical school, and the demands kind of decreased a little bit in your third and fourth year because it's my clinical rotations. And so I was basically, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, I was just raging,
Yeah.
I was still doing everything I needed to, but progressively I was just drinking and drinking and drinking more. And a lot of it was the burnout, but also I started to discover like, man, medicine really isn't what I thought it was going to be. This is
Yeah.
not quite exactly what I signed up for, especially as you get into the clinical realm. So, so residency was what awaits me. And I chose family medicine because that's kind of what I thought best fit me. But, I was very nervous about it. And I didn't really feel great about going in. I was so burned out. My depression and anxiety were reaching like a critical point going into residency. Um, a little bit of a
It-
backtrack. I joined the Navy
yeah.
on a scholarship to pay for medical school. And so I
Okay.
was going to do my residency out here in Southern California, which is where I'm at right now on vacation, actually. But
Nice.
um, so, and so that was going to be me moving 2,000 miles from home away from my friends and family with a drinking problem and burnout like I've never burned out before. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
And so I showed up as an intern here and I kept doing everything I was doing. I was succeeding at a very high level as an intern. I was one of the top interns in my class. But on the weekends here in San Diego, I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe the stuff I was doing, and
Yeah. And
eventually,
were you seeking any treatment at this time? You mentioned your depression was getting really bad and your anxiety and your drinking had increased. Were you seeking any type of mental health treatment at all?
that's a great question. And the answer was no, because, I thought, especially now, I'm like, I'm a physician. I should be able to figure this
Yeah.
out. I'm smart.
Yep.
I've achieved everything in this point up to my life. I've figured everything out. Why can I not figure this out too? I can
Yep.
figure out how to, so, I made sure I was exercising and eating right. And all that stuff is good, but like,
Yep.
in conjunction with that, I was drinking 6 beers, a day at least,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
so,
it's funny.
uh,
That sounds just like me. I justified
yeah,
it the same way.
yeah,
I'm healthy. I'm going to the gym. I'm going running after work. I'm in good physical shape, and those things are also good for us mentally.
right.
And what you said is something that when I give my talks, I always include, and it's what I've heard every other physician or pharmacist. Anybody in the medical field say is they thought they can figure this out themselves because they had all
Mhm.
this specialized training. It's like, you're like the smartest person in the world. They're just as smart as anybody else, and
Right.
you'll figure this out. I mean, I remember doing like pharmacokinetics calculations about half-lives of the different opiates I was taking and figured
Yeah.
how I needed to taper and all this crazy stuff trying to figure it out because I'm so smart. And then what I tried to, you know, tell people and get them to understand it's like it doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter how smart you are, especially when it comes to substance use and addiction. Our brain plays tricks on us where it's just not going to work out.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever seen anybody. I know I haven't seen anybody. I don't know if it's ever happened. Somebody who used their intelligence and their smarts to get over addiction or chemical dependency or a drinking problem. I feel like it always takes an outside help, and that kind of intervention to get us straight and get us right back on the right track.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, all those things are that play into it. And, and then for any of us, licensed healthcare workers, right? I mean, there's the issue of licensing and if the board finds out we're struggling with mental illness, are they going to pull our license? If you're
Yep.
credentialed at a hospital, I mean, all this stuff, which,
Yep.
I can go on for about how wrong all that is, because it makes
Yeah.
us fearful to say how we're feeling and doing, but,
Yep.
at the time it is what it is. So, but
Yep.
yeah, so I was in the military, and mental health in the military, it's made some progress, but it still has a way to go. It was taboo to kind of talk about that stuff. And so I just thought, I'm showing up to work and I'm still doing and I'm achieving at a high level, so I'll be fine. But the problem was COVID hit, right? And then that was in my intern year. They put a travel ban on us, everything was locked down, and then I was working COVID, and it was just like the perfect storm, right? Like
Yeah.
everything. And so, I mean, it just steadily soaring in terms of like my substance use and depression. And then it slowly started to bleed into work. Right. And, there's days I'd have to call off because I was too hungover, sick and stuff like that. But I just didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I just didn't know what I could do.
Yep.
I didn't know what I had any options for recourse. And so, I didn't tell anybody. I mean, my friends and family would call and say, I'd be like, oh, I'm great. I'm living in Southern
Yep.
California. It's beautiful. The hiking weather, everything's perfect out here. Thanks for
Yeah.
calling, and then I'd hang up the phone and I'd cry and I'd just be so depressed because I knew I was lying to them. And
Yep.
so the fateful day was that I remember I was on my OB rotation and I hate OB. I just hated it. And not that this justifies it at all, but I was just miserable and hating work and hating everything and being so far from home and COVID and so, I drank extremely heavily the night before one of my shifts and I woke up. I mean, I slept maybe like an hour or two. I drove to work and I was intoxicated at work. I showed up,
Oh wow.
everybody could smell it. I was walking funny, talking funny around
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And I don't say this, I don't mean to be cavalier in saying this because what I did was the worst decision I could have made. That was, I've moved on from the shame and guilt of it. But I got caught and I got into a lot of trouble,
Yeah.
as I should have, right? And that was a very, very bad mistake on my part. And let me tell you, I have paid in double for what I've done, and as I should. But the whole point of all this that we'll kind of talk about is like you just don't want to get to this point. I mean,
Yep.
the amount of lawyers' fees I had to pay, for my license at that time, I got in trouble with the military, and you do not want to you play by their rules, which their laws are
Yep.
different than here. I got put in a barracks for 60 days, isolated. I lost my license in Virginia. I got kicked out of the Navy. I got kicked out of my residency. And I got kicked and they sent me home to Michigan. And so everything was over for me. I thought,
Yeah.
my life came crashing down because I just didn't want to get
Yep.
help. So,
Yeah.
um,
Do you feel, you mentioned a couple times that you deserve to get in trouble and pay double the price. Do you still feel that way? You showed up to work intoxicated. You weren't using an illicit substance. You weren't stealing fentanyl from the pharmacy. Doing some of this really wild stuff that happens. More often than we like to admit. I mean, yours was. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, he's drinking alcohol." Everybody drinks. He
yeah,
showed up intoxicated, hungover. I think if that were me, it would be hard for me to say, yes, I deserve that. It would be harder compared to what actually happened to me. But
yeah,
I just wondered, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's, I'm going to say it's just alcohol. I know it's not just
yeah.
alcohol, but let's look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point. I think just the nature of it, I think, I accept what I did was wrong, but it was just what I was doing and how I was doing it, with whatever substance it was, alcohol or otherwise, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I drove to work drunk and obviously, and then luckily, I didn't see any patients that day. And so,
Yeah.
everything was kind of avoided in that way. And so I guess, I don't, I guess you're right. I don't like the language of like, I deserve this and blah, 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 because I'm a human. I was struggling
Yeah.
beyond belief and I just didn't know what else to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't want to discourage people from saying like, you deserve to have this punishment because we're all suffering, we all deserve grace and mercy. And I've gotten a lot of it. I really have. So, I remember what, the day after I got caught, my CO, commanding officer of the whole hospital, called me up and she was actually very nice. And she said, Bryce, there are probably 25% of people at this hospital who are intoxicated right now. And she meant it. She's known it. And she was like, and what I need is your help trying to figure out a way to stop this from happening.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that because it's true. And so, I got kicked out at the Navy and I had to move home and I didn't even know if I want to go back into medicine. I was like, I don't think anybody's going
Yeah.
to take me back in residency, and,
Yep.
and,
Yep.
but I did some soul searching and reflecting and, I applied for my license in Michigan. And when I did, and Eric has experienced this too, I had to enter into a monitoring program through the state of
Yep.
Michigan, right?
Yep.
And that was contingent. If I did that, they would give me my license to go back and practice in Michigan. And so I did it, and I'm still in that program right now. And they are extremely intense programs. It's not a lot of fun, let me tell you, and it's very arduous, and it makes your life very difficult. And so, but I did that, and I practiced independently in Michigan for a bit, and by the grace of God, I got into a residency spot back in Michigan. I got a
Wow.
second year spot. So I did my first year. I finished my first year, and then I got entered into a very good program that I'm just about done with that residency. My residency's got 5 months left, and I'm at a
Yeah.
fantastic program that loves me and supports me, that never judged me.
Yep.
And so, and now my life's back on track, and it has been.
That's awesome.
And
How challenging was it to get into that residency? Because I'm sure you had to explain everything that happened, and how challenging was that for you to get into the residency?
I don't want to say that it wasn't challenging, because it requires you to be honest and vulnerable. And I think that part is extremely challenging. But, I think one of the skills I've always had is that I have a good way. I'm pretty good at interviewing, and I managed to take my story, and I don't want to say it in like a deceiving way, but I spinned it
Oh,
in a manner that said, look, my personal statement, I laid out step by step what happened and what led me there. And
yep.
I think it's fortunate in a world that we're living in now that people tend to be a little more forgiving. There are second chances.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves a second
Yep.
chance. And so I got I got 20 interviews, for residency, and I was shocked. I mean, I was just getting interviews, but I think it was because I was honest, and they
Yep.
could see that I had learned so much. And it's one thing to go through something, but it's a whole nother thing to go through something and learn something from that and tell people like what you've learned. I mean, I hate, I've learned so much from this experience. I've grown so
Yep.
much as a person, and now the work I'm doing, and I'm doing work that I love and enjoy on top of residency and stuff, but all this other
Yeah.
stuff, I love what I'm doing, but I couldn't do it if I didn't go through all that, and
Yeah.
so
Exactly. Yeah.
you just gotta,
You're taking everything from that bad experience and you're doing something good with it now. And
right.
let's talk a little bit about that. So, what are you doing now in this realm that you wouldn't be able to do if this didn't happen to you? Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know you have your own website, and I think you're going to be writing
Yep.
a book, and
Yep.
a
Yep.
variety of things here.
Yeah. So, I got back into residency, and then kind of the same thing happened to me again. Like, even though I had some time, I was like, man, I'm still getting burned out. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I'm still kind of feeling these same feelings. Luckily, I couldn't drink, because I was getting drug tested all the time. But, and
Yeah.
so that coping mechanism was gone. And so,
Yep.
I entered into with a physician coach to be like, what is going on? Like, why am I feeling this way? And
Yeah.
mind you, I'm also in therapy at this point, and I'm being
Yep.
honest with my friends and family about, hey, look, I'm not doing good. Like, what's going on? These are all things. But
Yep.
when I worked with this coach, she basically got me to do some really good value work, and she allowed me to, find something that outside of medicine. She's like, you got to have something outside of medicine that fires you up. And I've always had, I remember, I mean, when I was going through recovery and getting out of the Navy, I mean, I've always thought, like, if I could just help one person not go through the heartache and heartbreak I went through, this would make it all worth it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I always kind of put that off, because I'm like, I'm getting back into residency and stuff. But so, I was feeling pretty burned out at the end of my second year again. And I said, look, I'm going to give this a go. And I love writing. And so I just started writing, and I started writing on a blog and a medium called Substack. And it was
Yep.
something I did. I don't care, I mean, I want followers and everything, but I do it because it's good for my heart and soul, and
Yeah.
in that blog, I just share the raw details of what happened, the lessons I've learned. And Eric, like, I mean, people, like loved ones, people I know, people I don't know, have reached out to me and said, thank you for writing this. This has
That's
touched me. This
awesome.
has helped me. And,
Yep.
and that makes it all worth it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so from there, you just start, I'm just like propagated, right? Like, okay, well, what else can I do? All right, I'm very active on LinkedIn now. I'm connecting with all these people that are like you, who are, in the same space and struggle with the same things. And so like I'm trying to get my voice out there to say like, look, it's I know what you're going through, and I don't want you to be going through that, and I want to help you, and I want you to know it's okay. And
Yep.
so, you know, with the blog, I'm starting a podcast soon. I just ordered the mic actually the other day for that. And that's going to be along the same lines. I'm going to have guests on there like you that, hey, this is a human being right here who has also struggled and in
Yep.
healthcare. Let's see what we can learn from this. I'm writing a
Yep.
book. I'm going to do some coaching. I've got all these really fun things outside of medicine that like just light me up. And but I wouldn't have found all this. I wouldn't, I mean, I this is all I think about now is just like, how can I create some more stuff to help people, you know? So
Yep.
it's really cool, you know, it's like paying into purpose kind of deal. And I'm having a
Yeah,
blast.
exactly. That's awesome. One of the things that you mentioned or you kind of alluded to was even when you went back to residency and you started having those feelings of burnout and I imagine there was some depression in there and anxiety, just everything. I related to that too because it was the first time in my life where those things got really, really bad. And I thought something was wrong with me. I'm like, this is not okay. I should not be feeling this way. Something is wrong with me. And because I thought something was wrong with having those feelings, I did something to numb it,
Yep.
self-medicating with first it started with alcohol, then led to prescription drugs. And early on in recovery, my first sponsor, I take it back as my second sponsor, who is also a pharmacist, he told me it's okay to not feel okay, or to not be okay. And that was the first time I've ever heard that. And I've heard it like a
Mm,
million times since then. But
yeah.
that was like a revelation for me. Like, it's okay to not feel okay. Really? Like, that is a total game changer for me because I thought if I didn't feel okay, it was not okay. And I needed to do something about it to make myself feel okay. So then I
Yep.
started using substances to make me feel okay.
Right.
And so that's one thing I tell people I work with also. It's like, if you're not feeling okay, like, that's fine. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you don't need to do anything. That will go away. Of course, there are
Right.
healthy things. There are a lot of healthy things we can do, and I talk about those things as well. But it's not something you need to do right now to make it go away.
Right.
And yeah, so if anybody's watching this and like you identify with what Bryce said or with what I just said, like you're having those feelings, like, that's okay. That's
It is.
normal, and that is to be expected in these situations where there's a lot of pressure, whether you're in undergraduate, graduate school, you're going through a residency, or you're practicing in medicine or pharmacy, or what other profession it's going to be. There is going to be stressful times with a lot of pressure, and you don't need to take anything from the outside to make yourself feel better. um, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's not the solution.
It
And
isn't.
it's interesting because when it comes to alcohol and drugs, they work extremely well. Like, for what you were going through, like, it worked well, probably better than anything else, until it doesn't. And then you
Right.
have the opposite effect. It's like, this made things 10 times better for me. This is the solution. But when on the other side of it, it doesn't make it just 10 times worse. It makes it 100 times worse.
Yep.
Um, yeah, never worth it. And I think that's really um, kind of deceiving how addiction works. And that's why so many people fall into the trap. And that's why so many people struggle with addiction, because they're like, it worked for me before. It gave me everything I needed. Now it's not doing it. Maybe I need to use more. Maybe I need to use something else.
Something
And as they're
different.
going
Yeah.
through this process, trying to figure it out, they're just slowly getting themselves in a worse and worse place. And a lot of times destroying their lives along the way. And it's really, really sad.
Yeah.
Um, so, Bryce, I want to start wrapping things up here a little bit, and we could talk about this stuff for a really, really long time. But for anybody watching this who is having a difficult time, similar to what you were going through when your drinking started to increase and became unhealthy, what advice, what suggestions do you have for that person? I know there's a bunch of things we can tell them, but what are some things that are top of mind for you?
Yeah, I think first is kind of what you said is that, remember that our jobs, I mean, my girlfriend's a pharmacist, so I have some idea, but I just know healthcare in general. Our jobs are incredibly stressful. They are so difficult, and there are so many pressures on us that it's almost norm to feel burnt out, to feel depressed, and to feel anxious, right? And
Yeah.
so I think if we said we haven't felt that way at some point in our careers, whatever field we're in healthcare, then I think we're not being honest with ourselves. And so, if you're feeling that way, again, I want you to know it's okay. But we just don't want you to feel that way forever, right? And before it gets to a critical point like mine did, where your whole life is teetering on a cliff, please do the best thing I can tell you to do is just be honest, and be honest with people you trust, right? A close friend, a relative, a therapist. And I would say, one hard lesson I've had to learn is do everything you can to keep it away from like licensing boards and things like that, right? To prevent it from getting to that point. If you're struggling with substance use, don't go tell the licensing board, or don't tell someone that could tell the licensing board, because that will put you into a whole different set of things. So, so that's probably like my biggest piece. Just be honest with yourself and understand that you're not alone. I'm in a small group now with this physician monitoring program I'm in. There's people that have diverted narcotics, the anesthesiologists that would put gas on them. So, I mean, we're not all different. We are all human, and it's okay to just say, look, I'm struggling. I need some help, but do it before it gets bad, because you do not want the consequences that like Eric and I have had to face. So
no, that's definitely good advice there, Bryce. I remember when I was in my recovery program, and they had us in there with physicians and dentists and physical therapists for part of it, and hearing some of the stories out there as well. A physician was found with a needle in his arm in the break room from some narcotics he stole from the OR. Those kind of things. And one thing I've noticed being in recovery is I've always been real hard on myself. A lot of guilt, a lot of shame, because I feel like I deserve it. I feel like that's what's going to make me better, keep me from going back. And I've noticed that's not necessarily true. Actually, that's not true at all in many cases. I don't want to say all the time, but I feel like in the majority of time, I feel like people who hold on to that guilt and shame have a tougher time in recovery and staying clean and sober than those who almost make light of it. Because a lot of these physicians and other pharmacists who've done some wild things, I say, 100 times worse than I ever did, they would laugh about it and they would joke about it, just kind of like, oh, it's a thing of the past, it's no big deal. And I feel like that is a healthier mindset to have than constantly beating yourself up day in and day out because of the things that you did. So get rid of that guilt and shame, and that takes a lot of work. It's taken me a long time. Long time to get over that as well. And I still struggle with it sometimes, for sure. It's like the old me always trying to come back, but I have to, keep him out the best that I can. And then, you were saying, keep this stuff away from the licensing boards. I've had multiple people ask me if they get treatment, is the board of pharmacy going to find out? Somebody wanted to start going to AA meetings, and they're like, if I go to AA meetings, is the board of pharmacy going to find out? I'm just like, well, it's Alcoholics Anonymous, so it's anonymous. Like, nobody's going to know. But these are like serious questions people have. And, if you go to AA, nobody's going to find out about it, right? You don't have to tell people you're a pharmacist. You can if you want. You don't have to use your real name if you don't want to. It doesn't matter, but even if you're completely honest about everything, the board of pharmacy is not going to find out. And then what I tell people is like, even if the board of pharmacy or the medical board found out you were going to AA, I don't think they're going to get you in trouble for it. They're probably going to applaud you for it. They're going to be like, good, you're doing exactly what we want you to be doing. Like, keep up the good work, keep going, keep going. And then even going to treatment. I know when I first went to treatment for my inpatient facility, the board of pharmacy never found out about that. It's just like, it's your, private health information, PHI. And so, there's no way anybody's going to find out for that. If you got in trouble further down the road and then you disclose that information, then they could maybe ask for records. But without having any board involvement, they're not going to find out about a substance use problem or mental health disorder through, a physician or a hospital, because all that's protected information. So there's a lot of safeguards there. You don't need to worry as much as I think a lot of people do. But the takeaway is, go do those things, get the help you need before something really bad happens. And then where the board of pharmacy or the medical board or whatever board is going to find out about it.
Yeah.
And that happens, like in your case. You were
Right.
at the hospital, and the hospital staff found you under
Yep.
the influence. Then they had to report you. The main one that happens is, well, it's that one, or it's a criminal record. If you ever get
Yeah.
arrested for DUI,
DUI.
intoxication in
Yep.
public, anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get put into the police record system. And then all the boards, the licensing boards, they check that on a regular basis. And if you pop because you're in the system, then they're definitely going to find out about what happened, and you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
Also, with that said, if that ever does happen to you, and this is what I tell people is, yeah, sorry, Bryce. No, we're going. We're
Oh
over.
no, you're good. You're good.
We're over
You're good.
twice. I'm gonna shut up here pretty soon. I promise. But I love talking about this stuff and giving this information out to everybody. If you ever do get a DUI or get in trouble with the law for anything, whether it's drinking, substance use, it could be anything. Just know that the board is going to find out about it. So what I always recommend, it's like, you're probably going to need to get a criminal attorney for these kind of things, but you also need to get a licensing attorney and be proactive about this, because the last thing you want is for the board of pharmacy to find out about it on their own, do their full investigation, without you being prepared. At least this way, you get an attorney, you work on a game plan for, okay, well, what do we need to do to kind of mitigate this situation and make the damage as least as possible. Now, I don't know exactly what that's going to be. There's a lot of specifics. He may suggest going to the board. He may say, well, they may not do anything. Let's just sit back and wait, but let me have you go to treatment. There's a million different ways it can go. But the takeaway is, if you ever do get in trouble with the law, do speak to a licensing attorney who specializes in your field to have some sort of game plan and direction. Because I didn't do that, and then it was rough. So,
yeah.
Yeah, learn the hard way.
Yep.
Well, Bryce, I'm going to let you go. I know you're on vacation in beautiful Southern California, so I don't want to keep you anymore. It's been fantastic having you on. Best of luck to you with your finishing up your residency, and then all these other really exciting things you have going on. I'm really glad that's very fulfilling for you. That's really fueling you, and you're enjoying it, because it's awesome. It's definitely something that is much needed out there.
Yep, absolutely. Eric, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Cool. And everybody, thanks for watching this. If you have any questions for me, you can find me at rphally.com. Head on over to the peer support channel, or you can find me on LinkedIn, or go to my personal website at www.ericjspec.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Bye, everyone.